Good morning and welcome to the programme. We have a lot to cover this morning. Geoff Harris is joining me in studio. We'll be talking about Larry Gogan in a second with Geoff. We're also going to be talking to Jennifer O Connell. She's on the way to Marion Finucane's funeral, and we'll be talking about New Year resolutions. Trevor Sargent is coming in. He'll be talking about religion and politics. We'll have the latest on the search for the missing fisherman, Willie Whelan, and also we will have a discussion about John Pratt and the decision not to go to the commemoration ceremony, and views about the Black and Tans and the RIC and all that. And we'll be covering the story on the front page of the News and Star regarding emails that were sent by hospital consultants regarding overcrowding and the assertion by a consultant that an internal email showing that people die because of being left on trolleys. Firstly, we're going to go to the idea of another man gone, Geoff. Another broadcaster
Another
gone.
legend.
Another legend gone. We'll start by playing a little clip from Larry Gogan when he was interviewed by Gay Byrne. As we know, Gay Byrne has died as well. And this was Larry and Gay talking a little bit about the quiz. Just a minute. Here we go.
The Taj Mahal, opposite the dental hospital, which it is. Yes. On a technicality, they're right. Yes. Where's the Great Wall? China is the right answer. But where's the Great Wall? Crumlin, which is a Chinese restaurant there, simply called the Great Wall. Yes. And only last week has somebody complete this duo, Curly Wee and Dudley Moore. What town is associated with Shakespeare, Hamlet, and they own the black hole of Dakota? I don't know where they get it. It's the song, it's the association of course,
people get justifiably confused.
And recently there was one about who uses grease paint, and the fellow says a jockey, and I immediately was going to say no, it's an actor. And one of the sound fellows who know those things, says, but there's a horse called grease paint, so he was quite right.
Some classics there, isn't there, Geoff?
I have more here. Do you want to hear them?
Go on, tell us.
There was one here, as happy as
a pig in.
With shillies. There was another one about, name a bird with a long neck, Naomi Campbell. But there you are. But these things come in threes, Damien. Isn't it very sad? Gabo, first of all, and then we had Marion Finucane, who's been buried today, in fact. So the RT have taken some hits over the last few months. It's very sad.
You are many years broadcasting yourself. You're here in WLR for quite a few years. You worked in RT as well. When did you work there?
I worked there in 79 at the very start of 2FM, Coming At You, as they called it. So that's the first time I met Larry.
And Larry was there.
He was there.
And tell us about your memories of Larry.
I remember the first time I met him, and we had all been at some kind of an induction day because we had to go through all these things, the civil service and all that, and you couldn't say this and you couldn't say that, and how to pronounce names and stuff. And at the end of the whole thing, somebody suggested, now these were all guys like, who was there? Marty Whelan, Ronan Collins, Jim O'Neill, Jerry Ryan, God rest him, and all of those lads, Ronan Collins, did I mention him? And we all went down, and it was like a pilgrimage into the studio where Larry was, and here was Larry doing his thing. And I'd never been in a radio studio, to watch that going on, a proper one that everything worked in. Does here too now, but in the pirate days nothing worked. Everything was held together with sellotape. And here was Larry. But the extraordinary thing was that it was a comp op studio, as they called it. So the DJ or the presenter could work everything. So you had record players, at the time we had record players, at the desk and all the microphones. But he had to give hand signals outside to the guys in the control room to play. They had a disc guy to play the records. They had a guy to do the sound. And all Larry had underneath the desk was a stopwatch to do the voiceovers. Do you remember he used to talk up to the end of the vocal? And he had a pen and he did all the hand signals. And we were watching, just agog at this guy. And he came out and, how are you lads? How's it going? Larry, how's it going, lads? I see you all. And the one thing I do remember that day, we all went for coffee afterwards, and Larry never saw any of us as a threat, because I was only 20, I think, and all the rest of the lads were kind of a similar age. I think I was the youngest of all that new batch came in. And it was just that he was just very friendly, very encouraging, and if he always was at his desk, if you went over and asked him something, he'd give you some advice, and he was just a smashing man, he really was. Yeah,
I met him a few times myself, and Keith Walsh, the DJ this morning, he's tweeted how helpful he was to him, and just little comments saying, I heard you this morning, very good. again, that constant encouragement, that constant trying to say, that was good, and little bits of advice.
And that'd be like £1 million to you. Just a little thing like that. And he really was a very caring man. And something people tend to forget, he was in 2FM for 40 years. He was on Radio 1 or RT Radio for 20 years.
Yeah.
He used to read the ads, and then he had his own shows. And of course, that was the first time I ever heard an Irish music programme. Himself and Ken Stewart, I think it was.
So I think he was the first, you could say, DJ on RTE Radio.
He was, really.
Yeah.
And for those of you who remember back to the 70s, he kind of he loved the style of Alan Freeman. Do you remember him at all?
Yes, I do.
The Australian guy.
Yeah.
And he didn't copy him, though. He kind of, he used his style, though. It was a real, speedy kind of slick style that Larry had. And that lovely voice that the man had was incredible. Really was.
Sundays then he'd be doing his shows, and himself and Florrie, his wife, she died around 10 years ago, I think.
She did.
What was Florrie like?
She was lovely. I mean, everybody wondered how he'd drive on after she passed, because they were always together every function they were at, and she kind of ran his life. I mean, she got him ready, and she looked after the money in the house and the whole thing, and Larry had his shed out the back with all his discs, and Larry get his show together, and they were like Darby and Joan or whatever that couple were called. They used to go everywhere together. They were really lovely people. And if we were away... we were in Istanbul when Chris Dorn got over for the Eurovision, and Larry was over. So Larry was giving me a few tips not to get in the taxis. And he said, don't go across that river, that Bosporus River, on that bridge in a taxi. I said, what happened, Larry? He says, they bang off each other and try and make the meter go fast. So I said, OK, thanks a million. That's grand, Larry. I won't do that. But yeah.
Had he a good sense of humour?
Oh, yeah, he was an awful divil altogether. And especially up, in the office, he everybody kind of was very seriously, in awe of the man. But I mean, he'd take the mick out of everyone and have a laugh. And I do remember, though, I remember asking you how to get in. There was a new entrance into RTE, because I went up for Larry's retirement, when he moved to digital.
Summer, yeah.
When he moved to Gold, RTE Gold. And it was really lovely, because, I mean, people keep saying, it's terrible. You go to a funeral. Well, terrible is the wrong word to use, but, and everybody's talking nicely about the person who's passed away. But this was like a celebration of Larry, and they had Ronan Collins in Studio 1, where the orchestra is. It's a huge place. And they had closed-circuit TV and big screens up. And loads of who's who out of the showbiz industry. And they very kindly asked me and a few of the lads that were in 2FM years ago. And Ronan Collins went through his life and stuff, and it was really nice. I was kind of shocked at how much he'd failed, though, because I'd heard him on the wireless. They'd changed 2FM into, Larry Gogan FM for the day, and he sounded brilliant, and the voice was beautiful, lovely golden voice Larry Gogan always had. And then when I got up, Larry arrived in, and he was on a Zimmer frame, and he'd failed an awful lot. I know he was on the 6-1 News that night, and people saw him, but the voice never failed at all. But they went through all his stuff, and they had a lot of his PAs, his assistants, through the years in, and the boss guys and the boss lady from RTE, Dee Forbes, is it? Yeah, she's the boss. And it was a lovely afternoon. Every person, I think, who went up had nothing but nice things to say about it. And they just said, Larry's such a nice fella. I never heard him say a bad word about anyone.
Yeah, and I've never heard anybody say a bad word about him.
Larry, yeah, true.
That's a true mark of a man. As you say, the two loves of his life, his wife Florrie, and music. Music, yeah. My understanding was after Florrie died, he said, right, I have another love in my life, I will concentrate on the music now. And the kids. And that's what carried him through. He was amazing in the sense that he continued to play relevant music. Sometimes you get DJs that will say, OK, I'll play it, but he was still doing the relevant stuff as well, wasn't he? He was. I mean, it even goes to show, well, I suppose U2 are around a while now, but I mean, U2 came along late 70s, and I remember Larry... drummer Larry and U2, Larry Mullen, he paid him a huge tribute, and they were great friends, and Larry used to be invited to all the gigs with the kids and stuff, and even up to, he had once again had advice to give to the musicians, because the Irish music industry got a right boost, I suppose, when we all started playing Irish stuff in the country, between the commercials and 2FM and all of that, and he always had a lot of advice to give to people, how to get your records played, all that kind of stuff. And, it was nothing but good stuff coming out of the man. He was such a good guy. He was great. You'll miss him. I will. And unfortunately, I think that the digital station has been closed
because of the cutbacks.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe that contributed to the fact that maybe he just didn't want to hang around any longer, but he certainly had some innings, the man. He was brilliant. 60 years on the radio. Not bad.
The 60-second quiz. Let's see if we can find it here again and just play that again. Just the little chat between Larry and Gay Byrne. Geoff Harris, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Damien.
It's going to be a poignant day for you because, as you say, you were there in 1979 when you started with 2FM first, and you knew him for so many years. So our deepest sympathy from everybody in WLR to Larry's family and to his friends. Here's a little bit again with Larry and Gay Byrne. Geoff, thanks very much.
Thanks, Damien.
The Taj Mahal, opposite the dental hospital. which it is. Yes. On a technicality, they're right. Yes. Where's the Great Wall? China. No, it's the right answer, but where's the Great Wall? Crumlin, which is a Chinese restaurant there, simply called the Great Wall. Yes. And only last week has somebody complete this duo, Curly Wee and Dudley Moore. Our town is associated with Shakespeare, Hamlet, and they own like the black hole of Dakota. I don't know where they get it. It's the song, it's the association
of course, people get justifiably confused.
And recently there was one about who uses grease paint, and the fellow says a jockey. And I immediately was going to say, no, it's an actor. And one of the sound fellows who know those things, says, but there's a horse called grease paint, So he was quite right.
Now, a lot of funerals in the news, reports in the papers today on the funerals of Dick Hayes, of Dan McGrath, the obituaries there, and Johnny Matthews and many others. Paul has texted in on a positive note, well done to Jordan Casey last night on Nationwide. He's an inspiration, and didn't the city look great? A marvellous advert for Waterford. Text us in please, 083 333 975, or you can call Audrey on 051 846 123. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We may not get time to do the story I was covering yesterday evening, due to cover it this morning about graveyards and St Patrick's Gateway. We'll come to that if we can. Firstly, another funeral taking place up in Kildare today. It's the funeral of Marion Finucane. We didn't get to cover the funeral and the death, I suppose, in a major way over the Christmas period. So Jennifer O Connell is with the Irish Times. She is on the way to the funeral at present. I spoke to her just before we came on air about Marion's legacy, but also about Jennifer's 10 New Year resolutions. We want to know, have you got New Year resolutions? Do you think they're a good idea? And text us in, what is the weirdest New Year resolution that you have ever made? So here's our main little chat with Jennifer O'Connell. Good morning.
Good morning, Damien.
Thank you for joining us. I know you're heading off to a funeral this afternoon, the funeral of Marion Finucane.
That's right.
Taking place in Kildare.
Yeah, in Kill actually at midday today. So yeah, it's going to be a huge funeral. I believe the church is quite small, so the media has been advised to get there early if we want to get a seat. But I think it'll be a very sad occasion, and it's kind of shocking. I sort of took a bit of time out over Christmas away from. I wasn't on social media. I was dimly kind of keeping an eye on the news, and sort of to re-enter the fray and realise that I'll never again hear Marion's voice. I'll never tune in on a Saturday or a Sunday morning to hear what the panel are discussing. It's a big moment. It feels like a real loss to the Irish media,
because it was so sudden. Like if she had retired a year ago, but the fact that she was still on air, I think that makes it even more of a loss.
That's right, yeah. And we were expecting her back on air. She should have been back on air at the weekend. And, and she's just been such a seminal presence, I think, in the media since I was a child. And I was always interested in the media and probably always wanted to be a journalist. So I would have looked to people like Marion when she was doing Live Line, would have come home from my school lunch and listened to the beginning of it in the kitchen. And I think just even, there being a female voice on air made it seem like women, that was a job women could do. Because that was a time when I remember, telling the nuns in my primary school that I wanted to be a dentist when I was a kid, and they told me that women couldn't be dentists. So it seems unbelievable now, but back then it was kind of important to see women and to hear women in those kind of roles. So I think from that point of view, it's an enormous loss. And I wouldn't have known Marion. I never met her. I was never on the programme with her, sadly now, because I'll obviously never have that opportunity. But, she was somebody that I would have looked up to from afar. And I think she had a very warm way about her when she was interviewing people that I think a lot of people could learn from. It'll be interesting, the funeral, and how it's going to be, I suppose, reflected, and there's been a lot said about her. I interviewed her a number of times for Nationwide, and also was on her programme a few times. Didn't know her that well, but she always came across as a very nice person.
I suppose in time, and this week is not the week to do it, there will be an evaluation, a re-evaluation of her place in broadcasting, because some people would say certainly the last 10 years she may not have been as trailblazing as she was at the start. But that'll come in time.
Yeah, I think it's there has been criticism in recent years of her workload and her salary and whether she's putting in the hours. I think the 4 hours per week thing in quotes was always a bit simplistic, because obviously she would have been working as you know, and a huge amount of preparation would have gone into each of those hours that she was on air. But I do think that there were probably questions to be asked, as there were about a lot of RT presenters' salaries. It's probably fair to say, I think, that it wasn't maybe as groundbreaking in recent years, the programme, as it had been. But, do we need groundbreaking on a Saturday and Sunday morning? It reflected, I think, that moment in people's week. It was kind of a restful moment for reflection and a bit of chat. And, maybe the time for that had gone. I don't know. But certainly she's somebody that I would have definitely looked up to. At times, she drove me mad. There were times when I shouted at the radio. There were times when I would have tweeted about disagreements I had with her, or times she picked up on stories that I'd written and I felt I should have been given credit and I wasn't given credit, and all those kind of petty things that people in the media fall out over. But on the whole, her contribution to the media landscape has been fairly much unparalleled, I think.
How are you getting on with New Year resolutions?
Well, I love a New Year's resolution, I have to say. I'm a sucker for them.
Do you always make a New Year resolution?
Every year I sit down with my journal. This year I've outdone myself. I have no fewer than 10 resolutions for this year.
Is this a record?
This is a record,
yeah. Really?
Yeah. So I sit down with one of these journals. This is my little bullet journal where I keep my life, and I've written down my
turquoise book there.
Yeah, I start out with one or two. I kind of go, I didn't even really think about them this year till New Year's Eve, and then every year I go, no, I'm not going to do it. I like myself as I am. I don't need to improve. But to be honest, I do need to improve. There are so many areas in which I need to improve. So I like New Year's Eve. I like New Year's resolutions, and I like them so much that I do them again for my birthday. My birthday is 7th of July. In case you want to make a note of that, Damien, in your bullet journal, 7th of July. Which is halfway through the year, so I tend to do another set of resolutions, basically just repeating all the ones that I didn't do.
Do you keep a record of your resolutions over the years? So you keep your little diaries over the years. So in other words, have you checked last year's resolution?
Yes, I have. They're at the beginning of this book. And have I stuck to them? No, I have not. I don't even know how long I lasted. Probably, I can glance back now and tell you if I can find them here. Yeah, probably I lasted a couple of weeks with some of them, but yeah, okay. I didn't do great. This year I'm doing great. I'm off to a very strong start already.
Tell us the 10 New Year resolutions then, because this is
some of them are a bit more personal than others now. I might skirt around some of them a bit because this is, a genuine effort to improve myself. So number 1, I'm going to do 30 minutes of aerobic exercise every day. Now I measure this by the green ring on my Apple Watch. And so it closes after 30 minutes. So it can't be just kind of wandering around the WLR building and going up and down getting a cup of tea. You need to actually put a bit of effort in.
Or going shopping.
Yeah, shopping doesn't count. I find that I close it anyways on the days I go to Dublin for work, because I have a Dublin walk that I do that's about 10 times faster than my Waterford walk. And so, if I'm walking fast, I will just do it when going about my daily business.
Swing in a certain way?
No, I don't think so, because I usually have a bag. I think, I'm doing it here. I don't think the arm swing, but I just walk very, very fast when I'm in Dublin. So it's 30 minutes fast walking, or I might use the elliptical trainer. I have an elliptical trainer at home. Might dust the clothes off that and stop using it as a clothes horse and use it for what it was intended, or a bit of a run. So I'm doing that, and I'm going to do that for 100 days. That's the key this year. I'm going to just put a time limit on everything. I'm not trying to improve myself forever. These New Year's resolutions will all expire on the 10th of April. Which is the 100th day of the year.
You don't have to go through all of them, as you say. Maybe skip over a few, but give me a few of the other.
Are you bored already? Is that what you're telling me?
Give me a few of the choice ones, because I want to discuss the whole concept of resolutions and
how you make them work. Yes,
and why they should be there. This idea that you'll feel bad if you don't make a resolution.
Well, I think one of the key things, and I did listen to a few podcasts before I made the resolutions this year, because this year I'm not going to fail in them, and they need to be that dreaded word SMART. Have you come across the concept of the SMART goal? So it needs to be specific.
Oh God, here we go.
It needs to be measurable. So like, I need to close the green ring on my Apple Watch, or I need to do 30 minutes or whatever. It needs to be achievable. So that's why I'm saying 100 days. And that's why I'm saying I'm not going to say that I'm going to go for a run every day, because that's not achievable. Okay. But on days when I have to get the early train to Dublin and the late train home, I'll still fit it in, because I'm just going to be walking around fast. So so SMART, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely, or kind of time constrained. So they have to be done within a certain time. There has to be a deadline on them. And relevant means relevant to me. They're not somebody else's resolutions.
Hit me with a few more of them.
Okay, so I'm going to do 100 hours, you see a theme emerging here, of writing for myself that is not related to my work on various projects. I've got various book projects that I've had on the go for the last maybe 2 years. So,
years, you mean?
Yeah, probably. We're like 20 years.
Is there a book in you?
Well, who knows? 2020 will tell. What
a Bram Stoker crime thriller? Are we talking gory? Are we talking...
No, so I have quite a lot written of a manuscript, a fiction manuscript of a book. And I have an idea, a really good idea for a non-fiction book, and they're both very thematically similar. They're both kind of set in the Silicon Valley world. So I probably just need to make a decision on which one I'm focusing those 100 hours on. But by the end of this year, hopefully I will come back here and I'll tell you that at least I got a first draft of a manuscript somewhat underway.
And in the fictional book, have you got so far as to maybe present a few chapters to a publisher?
To an agent, yes. And I got a positive response. So it's all good. So I just need to knuckle down and do it now, as my mum would say. So my third resolution, that's my second resolution. My third resolution is I'm going to take a probiotic daily. I have a particular probiotic that I like. It's called Zenflora, and it's good for keeping your stress levels and your cortisol levels under control. So I'm going to do that. So that's easy, right?
It says that on the packaging, does it?
No, we probably don't have time to discuss this at length, but you might remember that I took part in a documentary about stress and stress management last year. And as part of that documentary, I went through a clinical trial of this particular probiotic. So I actually have a printout of the results, and it shows that it did reduce my cortisol levels by around a third to a half over the space of 6 weeks, and it improved my cognitive performance in tests, in independent testing. So because I'm not really somebody who's into kind of food supplements and woo-woo stuff and crystals and all that. I generally tend to be really sceptical, but if it's backed by science, I like it. So I'm going to take my probiotic, my stress-reducing probiotic. Number 4, reducing the alcohol intake. I'm not cutting it out. I'm not doing dry January, but I will not be drinking on weeknights. So I'm keeping it just a couple of glasses of wine at the weekend.
So Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So Monday night or Tuesday night, if you have a stressful day, you're coming back from Marion's funeral, you've had a stressful day. And
I will have a non-alcoholic beer.
Okay. Yeah. Have you bought beer, non-alcoholic beer?
Yes, the fridge is stocked with the non-alcoholic beers. So so I think that one, I should be able to do that, I think.
Okay.
Number 5, cutting down on all social media.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that?
Well, I like it now. You're getting into the smart girl thing. How I'm going to do that is I'm not on Facebook anymore. I do use Instagram. I have an Instagram account, but I'm going to post there around once a month. That's it. I'm not going to browse mindlessly through Instagram. And it's Twitter really that is my nemesis, both my joy and my nemesis. I'm going to use Twitter strategically just for work purposes, and I'm not going to get sucked into Twitter spats or debates with people anymore because it just sucks the joy out of everything for me.
How long does it take for you to get up in the morning before you pick up your phone?
Yeah, not very long at all.
30 seconds?
Yeah, probably, yeah. Yeah, but I don't go on social media. I would be looking at the headlines in the Irish Times, and I'd be looking at my work email and trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing that day. So, but I'm straight into work mode when I wake up in the morning. So, I could add an 11th resolution if you like, but I think 10 is manageable.
Go on.
So number 6 is a bit woolly. I haven't managed to make this smart yet. So if you have any suggestions, please fire them at me. But I'm going to be in the moment more and just remember how lucky I am, and try and focus on the good things in my life. And I think we do have a tendency to sometimes think, if I'd taken this road instead of that road, my life might have been different, or to compare ourselves to other people. I don't tend to compare myself to other people as much as I compare myself to other imaginary versions of me. But none of that exists. The other life doesn't exist. So I need to focus on the life that I do have and the good things that I have in it, which are plentiful.
Me mammy and daddy as a young lad, why aren't you more like them? Why aren't we more like them? Up the road and down the street, Families, comparing families.
And those legendary children who lived up the road who never fought with each other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And always said thank you and always ate every bite of dinner that was on their plate.
Somebody said to me, the secret of a happy marriage, one of the secrets is never compare families. It's actually not a bad bit of advice.
That's a very good bit of advice.
Never argue when you're drunk and never compare families.
Yeah, never argue when you're drunk. But who manages to never argue when they're drunk?
It's true, yeah. And then you could argue while you're drunk about the other person's family and you're in a real...
And then my father-in-law says never go to bed on an argument, which is really good advice. But again, I'm just way too stubborn. It would never happen for me. So I am realistic. So I'm just going to be in the moment more. I'm not putting myself under pressure about arguments or anything like that. The next one is even woollier, but I'm going to be kinder. I'm just going to try to be kinder to the people in my life, to perhaps to my work colleagues in WLR,
I'd say,
to my family, to myself.
Not plumosing you. I'd say you're a fairly kind person anyway, though, are you?
Oh, that's very nice. That's very kind. No, I'm not really. No,
Really?
I'm not. No. At home, I am married to somebody who's incredibly kind. My husband, I have to say, is one of the kindest people I've ever met. And he is really kind to me. And I'm afraid that I don't reciprocate as much as I should.
Has he told you such?
No, he doesn't. And he doesn't. I don't think he has any complaints. I mean, I'm sure he'd be quick enough to text in if he does. No, I don't think he has any complaints. But he, for example, when I wake up in the morning, as soon as I sit up in bed, he will have a lovely flat white coffee on the bedside table for me. Yeah, and often this morning it was yogurt and granola as well. He's very kind.
What a husband.
Yeah.
I'd like to marry him. Is he standing over you, waiting for you to wake up, and then he's literally there beside you?
No, he just puts it on the locker. I might not even be awake sometimes. He just puts it on my bedside table and goes about his business.
Yeah, but he must be standing beside you waiting. Oh, okay, she wake. Scary. You wake up and there he is with the coffee. There you go, have the coffee.
Possibly. Yeah. No, but so anyway, I'm going to be kinder.
Going to be kinder,
yeah.
okay.
Might get up and do coffee for him one of these mornings.
1 out of 30?
Yeah, exactly. 1 out of 30. 1 morning out of 30. Yeah, that's achievable. We could do that. That's a smart goal. That's achievable.
Okay.
So 8. This is one for, I don't think you'll get this, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I'm going to do one thing every day that makes me a better mother. And this is to deal with my working mother guilt, or just mother guilt. I think all mothers work, whether they get paid for it or whether they work in the home. And there are very few women in my life that don't feel occasionally really guilty about their parenting and the standard of parenting. So I came up with this in the middle of last year, so I've already been doing it for a while, where I just felt like there are days when I, like today I'll be gone. I'll be at Marion's funeral, and then I'll be filing a piece later on, and then I'll have to drive back down. Probably have to do another bit of work on the way. So I mightn't get home very early. I mightn't get home till 6 or 7 in the evening, and then I'm tired and I come in the door, and it's just finding that hour before the kids go to bed to I'm not trying to do one thing for each child, but just one thing. Like maybe it's sort of sit down and have a conversation with them about something that happened in their day, or we might play a board game, or I will take my youngest to bed and read her a long story or something. It doesn't really matter what it is, but one thing every day. I feel like it's an incremental improvement in my mediocre parenting. So that's it. Number 9, this is a work-related one, but I've decided that, in my work, I'm going to be rigorous, relentless and fair. Those are going to be my key words for this year. And always, always, always read over it one last time before I file it. Why are you laughing? You recognise yourself in that one, do you?
Oh, I've been there.
Yes, I do this every single time. Everything I file, I read it back over it after I've sent it and I go, oh, for God's sake. Usually in the first line there's some massive typo. And then number 10, inspired by our colleague Liz Reddy this morning. I only added this one this morning. I'm not going to be buying any new clothes for myself for 100 days. Ooh. So until April the 10th, 2020, I will be wearing the same old rags that you've seen 100 times before.
Why is that a positive thing?
Because I would have a habit of kind of the slightly tipsy shopping on Zara or on eBay or on ASOS. I have all the apps on my phone. I come home after a couple of drinks and night out.
Liz is deleting some. Are you going to delete some of those apps now?
Yes, the apps are gone already. They're gone and they're not coming back. I might never bring them back, but I'm going to see if I can just manage to live on what's in my wardrobe until April.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll all still be here in April. Mm-hmm. We'll have you back in.
Okay.
We'll do a little chat.
Yeah, because quite a few of those are ending and expiring in April.
Yeah. So we'll do it 100 days.
So you'll have me in and I will be a healthier, fitter, better mother, kinder person. I'll tell you how many coffees I have made for my husband first thing in the morning, who's never on social media anymore and is just generally a more zen person.
And I'm not making any resolutions whatsoever, so I'll let you know how I'm getting on with that. Because I got disappointed whenever I let myself down by breaking them, so I said I'll try not to.
That's a novel approach.
Yeah, and maybe it might make me different or a better person.
So we can check back in April to see if you've just organically become a better version of Damien just by not making any resolutions.
Jennifer, safe driving today, safe travelling, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Damien.
That was Jennifer O'Connell from the Irish Times. She's working out of the studio here as well. And safe driving, as I said to you, Jennifer. Bad day for driving. Trevor Sargent, good morning.
Good morning, Damien.
How did you come to the studio this morning? On your bike or car?
The bike.
The electric bike?
Absolutely, yeah. The electric bike gets me all around the parish. I've taken a little promise to myself that I try not to drive within the parish between Tramore, Dunmore East, Anstown and Waterford City. And if I had to drive, it would be an emergency or on a Sunday when there wouldn't wouldn't be time to go between services on a Sunday.
Marion Finucane,
yes,
she wanted to interview you on the day of your ordination.
Indeed, yeah. No, Marion was such a warm-hearted person. It's hard to believe she's gone from us now, but our sympathies to John and Jack, indeed, and all who knew her, yourself included. On the morning of my ordination, the 8th of September, nearly a year and a half ago now, I got the call from the Saturday from Marion to say, any chance we could just say a few good wishes to you on the morning of your ordination. And honestly, my head wasn't in the right space. For a start, there was nothing guaranteed about the ordination. The ordination had to be arranged, had to be done, and I couldn't presume that I was going to be ordained, even though everybody was expecting it. So I just said, another time, Marnie, if you don't mind, because this morning I'm afraid I have to really focus on what God wants me to do, and I can't talk about it in advance.
And as you say, she's gone now, and
we miss her.
To her family. Trevor, stay with us. We're going to have a little chat, okay? Anybody want to text in, please do 083 333 975. If you want to text a philosophical matter and the existence of God and how we can prove the immovable force.
There you are. Weighty matters, Damien.
Now, welcome back. 083 333 975. Tony's texted in, getting straight to the nub of it. Tony, fair play to you. I hope you're going to ask Trevor about his role in the disastrous government that the Greens had in making the country go and bust.
That's a man who needs to get his facts right.
They don't mess around here, I'll tell you. Tony doesn't mess around. Other texts coming in, and people want to call in. You can call 051 846 123. Trevor Sargent, thanks for coming in to us.
Pleasure.
Reverend Trevor Sargent. Is that the correct title?
Well, if you're a solicitor writing to me, generally Reverend is, but Trevor is what most people call me.
Are you a curate? Are you what status are you now within the Church of Ireland?
Well, ordained a priest, as I mentioned earlier, about a year and a half ago, September the 8th, and that means that one is celebrating the Eucharist, the Mass, in whatever tradition, whatever name you want to call it, on a Sunday. And I suppose that's what most people identify as the job of a priest. But beyond that, I'm a deacon, and a deacon is somebody who serves. That's from the Greek to serve, diakonos. And as somebody ministering in this parish with Dean Maria Janssen, who's the Dean of Waterford, I am the curate, which essentially means, in a way, I'm an apprentice. It's normally 3 years, could be 5 years, depending on circumstances. One is in a position of being a curate, and that essentially means you're assisting the ministry of that parish.
And does one have to then do an exam after you finish your curatorship? What's the next stage?
Well, nothing that formal. But what really is the case is that to become ordained, first of all, you have to have a master's in theology, and that's something that was a few years of hard slog. I have to say, in my 50s, going back to study now, I have to appreciate my dear wife, Anya Neville, who's very good from a technology point of view, was a great help, because it's all online now, all the distance learning and everything else, all has to be submitted online.
No clogging, no cheating.
And there's no way one can cheat, no, absolutely.
You wouldn't do it anyway, a man of the cloth wouldn't do it.
Well, I mean, we're all subject to temptation, no matter, but at the same time, one tries to. No, the plagiarism is all done away with now with Turnitin and everything else. So it's got to a stage where that's the academic side of it, when you have the masters, and beyond that it's pastoral, obviously the preparation of sermons and all of the work that goes into administration of a parish. That's something we're not prepared for, really, and I have to say, if I was to give advice to people preparing people for ordination, I'd say please put a bit of focus on the administrative requirements, everything from general data protection regulations, safeguarding trust when it comes to child protection, vulnerable adult protection. All of those areas require regulation and administration and a lot of paperwork.
Are you enjoying it?
I absolutely love it. It is the fulfilment of a lifetime of really where I wanted to be. I mean, politics was important. It was, to me, primarily a pastoral as well as a policy job. But the pastoral side of it was what got me up in the morning.
Which came first? When did you become religiously awake? When did God come into your
from
life?
childhood, really.
Childhood.
Yeah, I mean, secondary school. I was interested in sport. I wouldn't have been the top, and so between nature and scripture union, they would have been the things that I had a social circle around. You know, that they would have been my hobbies, you might say.
Did you read the Bible when you were a teenager?
I did, yeah. Luke's Gospel was the first part of the Bible that I read.
Did you go for Old Testament as well? Did you go for the whole shebang? I went for the whole shebang. I read the whole lot of it.
Well, I've just finished.
My mother thought I was mad.
Well, fair play to you, because that's not easy.
It wasn't.
No, I have to say, last year I went back and read the whole Bible from Genesis to Revelation, just to get a context, to kind of pull back and get an overview of the whole.
It's a scary book. There's an awful lot of murder and killing, and
there was all sorts of gore and terrible treatment of people in the Old Testament was. But that, I'm sad to say, history is littered and still is littered with atrocities.
But did your religious consciousness drive you into politics, or was it just sort of a natural follow through, or was it parallel, or how did it work out in your life?
I think I had a great interest in history. As well as nature, and I have to say Larry Gogan's passing as well resonated me, because Larry Gogan, through listening to Radio Luxembourg, had a huge interest in music, and I used to listen to Radio Luxembourg, and this is long before RT2 and all the rest of it, or even WLR indeed.
That's right.
And Radio Luxembourg had at 10 o'clock a guy called Bob Stewart, who was a great DJ in his own right, but he had a particular interest in the natural world. And he had what was called the World Wildlife Fund news headlines. And that gave news headlines that went beyond, what political leader was given out by another political leader, and talked about the fate of the white rhinos in Africa, or the last Sumatran tigers, or the effect of whaling on the humpback whales, or whatever that might be. And it gave a picture to me that I felt was inclusive. And that inclusive nature was what drove me into politics. I felt that the natural world and the wider future of our children wasn't part of party policy, and it needed to be.
Should priests be more visible, says this texter? Should they be out more in the community teaching the Word of God? A lot of Catholics, in my experience, they don't know how the Church of Ireland actually works. They don't know, as I was explaining, the curate, the deacon aspect of things. There's still a lot of ignorance is maybe a wrong word, but unknowing.
Well, when you're in a minority, as the Church of Ireland is, naturally it doesn't, I suppose, register with a lot of people day to day unless they're involved. So I can understand that. That's absolutely natural. But I would say that the Roman Catholic tradition and the Church of Ireland tradition are similar in so many ways, and in fact all the Christian churches have a lot in common, and that's one thing that needs to be emphasised. When we all believe that Christ came and is God incarnate, and that is the central theme. So beyond that, you're talking about traditions that develop over time, and the Bible is still central to all of the Christian churches. So I mean, really, if one was to attend a church in a Roman Catholic church, as I often do, and I have good friends who are priests in the Roman Catholic tradition as well, and my wife is Roman Catholic, so, I mean, we would recognise that there's actually a huge amount in common.
Did you ever have any major doubts? Did you ever say, nah, this doesn't... To be honest, in God.
I really believe that we are generally created for a purpose, and all of us are put on this earth with a plan in mind. Now, as a creator, God is more visible to some than to others, but ultimately, if we look at the whole world around us, I don't believe it's an accident. I think it is far too complex, wonderful, and I'm very happy to identify with God as creator.
Again, we're not going to have time to get into the entire philosophical discussion of atheism and things like that, and we have to talk about politics in a minute. where do you stand in terms of trying to convince somebody that God created the world? When you have scientific evidence, when you have all the different developments of technology saying there are logical reasons, does it still come back to a God at the very beginning?
Very logical God, yeah.
Does it?
Yeah, I think so, because if you were to look at, let's just take that it's all happenstance and it's all accidental and it all happened somehow amazingly over many years. There's so much of what we depend on and take for granted that is a fine balance. In terms of chemical balance and physical balance, that if one, and the more I learn, and I some of my best friends are Christian scientists who are Christian. People like Professor John Feehan in UCD, for example, would be somebody that I'd have conversations with. I'd travel to Birr to meet him. He's a guy I have huge time for. Father Sean McDonough, the Columban missionaries. And Pope Francis, Laudato Si. They all resonate with me as people who come from a scientific enlightenment. And that enlightenment is given meaning and expression by their faith. To me, it makes a huge... I don't see any conflict between science and religion. I think religion explains why, science explains how.
Speaking of conflict and balance, I want to talk to you about Fianna Fáil and the Greens.
Why not?
Why not? Now, Trevor Sargent is with me here, a former Green Party leader. You were with Fianna Fáil in government. What about Tony's point that you ruined the country?
Well, poor Tony now might just need to look a little bit further back than the 2007 election and see that, as Michael Clifford in The Examiner said so well, the house was well on fire when the Green Party and Fianna Fáil were starting that government. And what needed to happen was a little bit like, sadly, the wildfires in Australia. There needed to be a lot of firefighting. The place was on fire. And the property prices, I can still remember in the Dáil in opposition pleading with people not to be cutting the rates for first-time buyers to get people on the property ladder, because people were just going to mortgage themselves and their parents and all around them into debt, and it was just a bubble. And sadly, it all proved the case when
Did you fail in your mission?
No, well, we're here. The country.
We're recovering now. I know.
The country has made some kind of a turn. Still, a lot of people are suffering, and an awful lot of people are hurting still. But really, if Tony wants to look back at pre-2007, you'll see that the Greens were warning exactly what was happening. That happened, and as Michael Clifford said, naturally, when firefighters go into a house that's on fire, they get burnt. And we got burnt. We were wiped out in the next election, and a lot of people were hurting, and naturally those that are in power at the time get the blame, and I understand that.
Are you going to canvass for the Green Party in the upcoming general election?
My work at the moment is so busy that I don't have a lot of time for extracurricular activity.
Now. We can do the Jeremy Paxman on this. We can ask it 10 times.
Now, Jeremy. Well, you can ask as you like. To be honest, I would help Mark O'Cosig in the morning, and I'd be happy to. He's a great candidate, and I hope to God Waterford gets a Green TD. I think it would help greatly in developing Waterford. We all know the success of the Greenway and all the rest of it, but there is so much that needs to be done in terms of planning for the future. I hope nobody's going to overlook the fact that climate change is the greatest disaster and crisis that we face. I know we have huge hospital problems. I know we have huge homelessness problems. And this programme does a great job in flagging all of that. But if we don't get on top of our emissions, all of that is going to be very secondary, because we will not be able to feed ourselves. We will have refugees coming from all over the world who are, at the moment, as in Australia, been forced to leave their homes. And we will find ourselves having to deal with a crisis that we have been warned about, but have decided to ignore.
It sounds like you are still very political in your reasoning, and that you would canvass for the Greens?
Look,
if Mark asks you, like again, the PR picture, as I said to you before, God is on our side, walking the Strand in Tramore with Mark and whatever the case may be, or around the place.
Look, my first commitment is the job that I have.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And
4 parishes.
Yeah, indeed. And I represent people from all political backgrounds and none. And I represent people in different situations pastorally, and my first responsibility is to them.
Are you allowed to canvass?
I have not been told I'm not, and I would know that, you know, that there would be people in the Church of Ireland who would be, you know, are elected and, you know, so forth. So, I mean, there's no conflict in terms of, I'm not advocating something that is not in line with my Christian faith. So I don't see any conflict. But what I do say is that my time and my energy is first and foremost committed to the people I represent and work with pastorally in the parish. I can see the need. We're not dealing with this crisis that we're facing in terms of climate change. And if all parties were to adopt all the green policies, I'd be so delighted. But unfortunately, that's not the case.
Okay. We've so much more to talk about. I was saying off air there, we'll get yourself and Bishop Alphonsus in, and we'll get the Humanist Society in, and we'll go through reason and science and faith and have
that'd be wonderful.
Philosophical discussion on it. We'll probably talk to you before the general election. See how the shoes are going if you're treading the walking, and and mind yourself.
I'd be giving probably counselling and pastoral help to the candidates, but that'll be about it, I think.
Mind yourself on that electric bike. And
thanks, Damien.
Thank you so much for coming in.
It's a pleasure.
Hello to your good wife, and we'll talk to you again.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Trevor.